Algarve, Portugal, 1450. A baby is born. Little does anyone know that he will soon become one of Portugal's most accomplished, yet obscure, explorers. Little is known about Bartolomeu Dias and his explorations. This is due to fierce competition and therefore secrecy between Portugal and Spain. Since many major records were destroyed or lost, there is no official account of Dias's most important voyage. In fact, there are only 3 contemporary references to Bartolomeu Dias, one of which was a note that Christopher Columbus wrote in the margins of one of his books. Columbus wrote, "In December of this year 1488, Bartolomeu Dias, commandant of 3 caravels which the King of Portugal had sent out to Guinea to seek out the land, landed in Lisbon. He reported that he had reached a promontory which he called Cape of Good Hope. He had described his voyage and plotted it league by league on a marine chart in order to place it under the eyes of the said king. I was present in all of this." With so few resources, we must start from the very beginning of Portuguese exploration to understand the impact of Dias's voyage around the Cape of Good Hope. In 1415, Prince Henry the Navigator from Portugal started the age of exploration and his plans of expansion by conquering the Moroccan trading port of Ceuta. In 1418, Prince Henry opened his school for navigation in Sagres, Portugal, and in 1433, he sent Jules Eanes to sail around the Cape Bojador to start the exploration of the African coast. This was a daunting task, as at this time, most people thought the world was flat, and by passing this cape, they would arrive at a place where the water was so hot that it boiled, and where dangerous sea monsters lived. In 1450, Bartolomeu de Noves Dias was born to an aristocratic family in Algarve, Portugal. He studied a number of languages, as well as physics, geometry, mathematics, and astronomy, all in preparation for a career at sea. By 1481, Dias had been named the sailing master of the Portuguese man-of-war, São Cristóvão, and was the superintendent of the royal warehouse. At this time, he also helped to construct a fortress along the coast of Guinea, near Mina. On October 10, 1486, King John II of Portugal commissioned Dias to find a sea route to India and to locate Prester John, the wealthy Christian king of a legendary African empire. The Portuguese believed that an alliance with this empire would help them overthrow the Muslims' land trading route, therefore making trading more efficient and spreading Christianity at the same time. Dias was provided with the most accurate tools and 3 of the best ships to make exploring new lands and waters easier. These ships were called caravels. They were small and fast, had good steering, improved sails, and could also travel in very shallow water. It was the first time a separate ship had been used specifically to carry cargo and goods. Dias captained the first ship, John Infante the second ship, and Pedro, Dias's brother, captained the supply ship. John de Santiago, an experienced sailor, piloted the supply ship. Also on this voyage was Christopher Columbus's younger brother, Bartolomé Columbus, who was a junior pilot. Dias brought with him 3 padroes, which were 7-foot-tall limestone crosses. He also brought 6 African captives, spices, and precious metals. These Africans were supposed to be put ashore in various places so that they could trade with the local people and try to locate Prester John. The expedition started in Lisbon as Dias sailed towards the mouth of the Congo River. Then, after following the African coast, he sailed into Walvis Bay. After Dias reached Port Nolof at 29 degrees south latitude, he lost sight of the coast and started sailing south in a violent storm that lasted 13 days. During the storm, Dias supposedly ordered the ships to sail south at a turn of about 28 degrees due to his prior knowledge of ocean winds. These winds would supposedly take him around the tip of Africa. Luckily, Dias made it out of the storm alive, but at a cost of losing some men, provisions, and worst of all, the crew's hope. During the course of the storm, Dias had unknowingly accomplished what no man had ever done before. He had rounded the tip of Africa. When the weather calmed, Dias traveled east, hoping to find land. When no land was sighted, he turned and started to sail north. He then realized that he had succeeded in rounding the southernmost cape of Africa. On March 12, 1488, Bartolomeu Dias landed at the Baía dos Vaqueiros, what is now called Mossel Bay. Unfortunately, Dias and his crew were violently attacked by the native people while they were searching for provisions. Dias then sailed to Algoa Bay, where he finally found refuge and decided to erect his first padroe here to mark his accomplishment. Dias now wanted to sail all the way to India. Unfortunately for him, his crew refused and threatened mutiny, in spite of him promising them great riches and fame. Many had died during the storms, many were now sick, the ships were badly tattered, and provisions were almost used up. The crew's resistance was led by the second-in-command Infante, a knight who was jealous of the lower-born Dias. But in the end, Dias was able to persuade them to continue on for 3 more days. When he reached Great Fish River and proved that India could be reached by using this route, Dias turned back. To avoid dishonor, he made his main seamen sign a document explaining what had happened. On June 6, Dias saw the rocky promontory that he named Cabo das Tormentas, or Cape of Storms, for the violent storms he and his crew had faced when they first rounded it. King John II of Portugal later renamed it to the Cape of Good Hope, because of the hope it brought by discovering a sea route to India. Dias then placed his second padroe here, before continuing on to Lüderitz, where he had left his supply ship. He placed his third and final padroe here, in Lüderitz. He then burned his supply ship and sailed back to Portugal, rescuing a few stranded sailors from a previous Portuguese expedition on the way. In December of 1488, Bartolomeu Dias reached Lisbon, Portugal, after an expedition that lasted for 16 months, 17 days, and after exploring about 2,030 kilometers of uncharted African coast. Later, in July of 1497, Bartolomeu Dias accompanied Vasco da Gama's voyage to India. Dias himself was influential in the building of Vasco da Gama's ships, but he stopped at Cape Verde and didn't go all the way to India with the main expedition. In March of 1500, Dias set sail on his final voyage. He captained one of 13 ships under the command of Pedro Álvares Cabral. On this voyage, they discovered Brazil. Then, Dias and Cabral set sail across the Atlantic Ocean towards Africa, where they had hoped to use the same passage that Dias discovered over a decade ago to reach India. As they neared the Cape of Good Hope, the ships got caught in a storm. 4 of the 13 ships were wrecked, and none of the crewmen on those ships survived. Dias was one of the fatalities. When Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope, he found a new route to India and set off a chain of events that no one at the time would have ever been able to predict. He triggered globalization and cultural exchange by encouraging empires, countries, and kingdoms from around the world to look towards the sea for trade. The increase of sea trade led more and more diverse people to meet. Cultures, and not just goods, were traded. This, like any other major event in history, had its pros and cons. On one hand, globalization led to conflicts, the global slave trade, and the introduction of foreign diseases, invasive species, and other maladies. On the other hand, it created the idea that the people of the world could interact with each other and work together for mutual benefit. Globalization improved the quality of life and brought opportunities to everyone. From Bartolomeu Dias's explorations came the global sea trade. From the global sea trade came globalization. And from globalization came the future.